The Minnesota Vikings front office, Kwesi, Adofo, Mensah, and Kevin O'Connell took to the podium yesterday and gave their review, their season finale update, answer some questions, and they do this every year. Actually, as they were preparing to speak, I sent out a tweet on X saying, remember, last year at this time, Kwesi Adofo Mensah mentioned that the Minnesota Vikings intend on bringing Kirk Cousins back. So you need to take everything that these guys say with a grain of salt. Don't take anything they say too seriously, because these guys are podium assassins. They say what they should. They say what they feel like they need to say to keep reporters off their back, to keep truth from escaping the insides of TCO Performance Center. And there was no update that was more fascinating than the update that they gave on JJ McCarthy. Each one talked about him. Each one gave an update on him. They each kind of echoed each other's sentiments and statements about JJ McCarthy. And let's just get right to it. Here's Kwesi Adofo Mensah on McCarthy.
Again, we don't know what was going to happen in this, obviously in the finish of the training camp. But he got a great mental year, as a redshirt year, but mentally, the process that they had, in our exit meetings with him, just talking about how much he learned this year as compared to other years in his football life, exponential, which you would expect for a young player in this building. And so I think we're really confident in him, his work ethic, and his preparation. But I can't sit here and tell you I know anything for certain. I know that I'm willing to believe in the person that we have. That position is about talent and preparation, and he's got those things in spades. And so if that's the course of action we decide, we'll go there confidently.
So that was a question about McCarthy and Sam Darnold. He also gave an update saying that he's on the field practicing and doing some drills and moving around. They showed a short video of him on NBC versus the Detroit Lions, of him without a brace on that knee, but more of a sleeve. So that's a good thing. The first thing that he said, we don't know how training camp was going to end. And I think a lot of people are thinking, well, maybe he could have been QB1 to start the year. And that was never going to be a possibility. Even Paul Allen, the voice of the Vikings, came on this podcast and said Sam Darnold was going to be QB1 regardless of how the second and third preseason games finished out. Paul Allen said that. He's within that Minnesota Vikings locker room all the time. So I believe him. And that's what I've been saying for the entire offseason last year, the entire training camp. Yeah, McCarthy's nice. He's stepping in nice. But Darnold's going to start the year as QB1, especially because the Minnesota Vikings bye week was at a perfect time to make that switch if Sam Darnold struggled. So that was Kwesi. Here's Kevin O'Connell on JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, I'm very excited about where JJ's at. I mean, I wanted to give you guys an update on him and a few of our players here from a medical standpoint. But, he's returned to on-field training. He's returned to being able to be right where we hoped he would be at this point, to have the type of offseason to be able to answer that question. I think he maximized what this year was for him. I think he's got a level of comfort in our offensive system and getting to, really have a front row seat for every aspect of what Sam went through from being in the first year in our system and watching it kind of morph and grow and adapt as the season went on, why we do things. Hey, we're being defended like this. Here's the next, alliteration of as our offense kind of continues to take shape to try to do the things we feel like we need to do to win every single game. So I think him being able to absorb a lot of that and now have a really positive offseason from start to finish here will be able to give us, I think the answer to that question, as well as, what that quarterback room looks like as a whole, the way I look at it. But very excited about the opportunity to to be there with JJ as he continues to, move through this wonderful thing we call the quarterback world. So I'm very excited about that.
The Minnesota Vikings love Drake May and would have preferred Jaden Daniels over JJ McCarthy. But JJ McCarthy was also their handpicked guy over Bo Nix. They liked him better than Michael Penix Jr., even though Penix Jr. went ahead of him. McCarthy was probably number 3 on their big board in the NFL draft last year. So they love him. And McCarthy is the future of the Minnesota Vikings quarterback position. And Kevin O'Connell just mentioned right there that he's back to on-field activities. And what he was also mentioning is that there's a lot of good mental work this season because O'Connell and McCarthy, they did do one-on-one sessions every single week. And they had the whole little camera on Sam Darnold's helmet with all of these different technological updates. McCarthy could pretend that he was playing quarterback and make reads himself. So all of those things are good. It's not on you're not on the football field, so it's not quite the same. But for a guy that couldn't play all year because of a devastating knee injury in preseason, and for a situation to happen midseason that we heard about a procedure, well, that's scary. I mean, nobody wants to hear that. That's never a good thing. We didn't really know how bad it was to have a second cleanup, a second procedure, but it's never a good thing. And now the Minnesota Vikings need to make the decision of how valuable or how far is JJ McCarthy in this recovery process, and do you trust him to be QB1 by the start of fall? Because that's the decision that they need to make on Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold is not the future quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. He's not going to be here in 2 or 3 years. But is he potentially QB1 to start the regular season come September? Maybe. But what I do know is that this situation is not the Arizona Cardinals situation of several years ago. They drafted Josh Rosen, I think with the 10th overall pick. And, of course, if you're going to draft a QB that high, you love him. But he struggles his rookie season so bad that the Arizona Cardinals got the number 1 overall pick that next year. And Cliff Kingsbury comes in and he drafts his guy, Kyler Murray. This is not that situation. The Minnesota Vikings do not love Sam Darnold so much that they are willing to trade JJ McCarthy to another franchise. So some of the national media members like Mike Greenberg mentioned that he thinks the Vikings are going to trade JJ McCarthy this offseason. It's not true. It's not happening because the Minnesota Vikings love him. Sam Darnold is not Kyler Murray. And especially after the final 2 weeks of the year, JJ McCarthy is not going anywhere. And he's on a rookie contract. And even though Darnold had a sensational year 1, he is still Sam Darnold and could revert back quickly to the Jets and Panthers Sam Darnold at any given moment. And he did it in the most pressurized moments of the season this year. The final 2 weeks against the Lions and Rams. So the Minnesota Vikings love JJ McCarthy, and it is a fascinating development that he's now doing on-field work. And this is all great news if you're the Minnesota Vikings organization, if you're a Minnesota Vikings fan, and if you're JJ McCarthy. Because now the question of, well, is he going to be ready by OTAs? Is he going to be ready by rookie minicamps? Is he going to be ready by this and that? Well, it seems like the question to that is answered. It seems like we now have some evidence that this knee thing is not going to be too long term and that he will be back on the field sometime shortly. Jordan Schultz is an NFL insider, and he went on the Herd with Colin Cowherd, and he mentioned and talked about the same situation. Because Tom Pelissero just went on KFan the other day and said that, and if you're making bets, the money would still be on Sam Darnold returning to the Minnesota Vikings. But a lot of this depends on what kind of feelers Sam Darnold's agency puts out. Obviously, it comes down to the Minnesota Vikings putting the franchise tag on Sam Darnold, but it does seem likely now that the Vikings will not do that based on the final few weeks of the year. And if they can bring back Daniel Jones, if they feel certain that they can bring him back for another year and be the backup / competitor with JJ McCarthy, well, then Sam Darnold's gone. If they feel they can bring back Daniel Jones, there is no room for Sam Darnold on the Minnesota Vikings roster, because they probably feel that they could do the same thing with Daniel Jones as they did with Sam Darnold if necessary. And hopefully they don't even have to think about that situation, because JJ McCarthy will be healthy for the entire season. So it seems like Sam Darnold is as good as gone, and the Minnesota Vikings are going to move on from him. And it's probably best for the Minnesota Vikings and Sam Darnold. Darnold can then receive a 3-year contract from some bottom feeder in the league, and hoping to try to make a playoff run and hoping to continue his sensational regular season play through 16 games. And the Minnesota Vikings then have all that salary cap space to bring in free agents and to bring in guys that they want to bring in. So fascinating development. It will continue to be intriguing as the offseason goes on. I'm sure more and more stories will come out about this situation, but that's it for today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. If you have not yet hit that subscribe button wherever you are watching or listening to this podcast. Everyone, take care, have a great day, and thank you for making this podcast a part of your day.